clear your throat. Now, follow after me by saying out loud the following word. 3. Now, let's say a few other words. Through and threshold. These words traverse the prefix trans of th, bridging the linguistic descriptors of across and penetrate into other spoken expressions, changing from one described state to another. In this case, these words of process share the linguistic root of the 3. The 3 arrives from the polarity of the dyad, creating the timeless mediator of relationship through the threshold, producing the 3. Prior to the first movement, and as with all characteristics of unity, the monad, or circle, already contains characteristics of the triad: center, radius, and circumference. Not until duality comes into relationship as the parents of all numbers is the firstborn that is the 3 created. 3, like a tree, bridges earthly and heavenly, roots and canopy. Geometrically, the firstborn births the first form, the triangle. In the dyad section, we explored the first squares linking to the cross. Triangles and squares simultaneously emerging from circles forms a grid of life, which we'll get into shortly. As the first triangles appear, they create the first rhombus, a mirrored polar expression of the triangle. As above, so below. This is the second birthing of further relationship through the masculine and feminine poles. Along with the square and many others, the equilateral triangle is amongst the first initial shapes to emerge through the archetypal portal of the mandalora, composing opposites and the product of their union. Between the polarities of the dyad, stabilization and balance through the triad occurs. The mediator, that is the triad, is present within all relationship, all polarity, foreshadowing all phenomena, including time. From the great relationship of the dyad, the triad manifests in form, process, and principle. Under a religious scope, different cultural cosmological expressions manifest from the archetypal frameworks of Big Threes. Some of them are linear in process, some not, but they all utilize the triad within their cosmology. This list is not exhaustive. As the binding stability between opposites, we find the parameters of the triad in the material realm, actualizing from concept to reality. The triangle proving the most geometrically stable basic form in existence. The 2D version of the equilateral triangle is composed of 3 vertex and 3 equal sides of length, while its first 3D expression is the tetrahedron, one of 5 platonic solids. Nature expresses herself through planar triangles, as well as through polyhedra, or 3D perfect forms, often composed of triangles, which nature uses as structural templates: the tetrahedron, icosahedron, and octahedron. The 3-legged stool is the most stable sitting apparatus of any spatial arrangement, and the triangle is widely utilized in construction, engineering, and design feats due to its superior stability in various applications. The oldest and grandest structures on Earth to stand the test of time are, of course, the Giza pyramids, utilizing triangular faces. Likewise, the stability of the triangle is exemplified in mountains and the formal erosion thereof, manifesting into triangular formations under the influence of Earth's gravitational force. Two ropes, or trusses, twirled around each other will become undone unless tied at the bottom, while 3 braids creates structurally sound knot. The trefoil knot, of Celtic origin, further represents the binding resolve and reunification that the triad brings to the original separation from the monad to the dyad. Sand dunes, birds and bird nests, natural pyramids, leaves, rose thorns, viruses, mammals, fish, quartz crystals, and a host of other formations within the mineral kingdom that form repeating, molecular, triangular, crystalline configurations. Triangular expressions in nature are everywhere. And let's not forget the triangular growth patterns found within fruit, vegetables, and flowers. The 3 doesn't just provide structural integrity in physical objects, but it is pervasive in systems as well. Our universe is composed of 3 primary qualities: energy, mass, and light. There's 3 types of bone growth cells. Our political system in the United States is composed of the executive, legislative, and judicial branches. All atoms after helium are composed of 3 parts: positive protons, negative electrons, and neutral neutrons. The Platonic solids, or primary 3D building blocks of reality, also are composed of only 3 types of shapes: triangles, squares, and pentagons, 3 of which are composed of triangles. The equilateral triangle, although visually simple, is laden with inherent complexity about the reality that we live in. One example of this is the equilateral triangle defining the octave of the circle, with the diameter of its circumcircle being twice the diameter of its incircle. An octave being composed of 7 natural steps, with the 8th step being the beginning of the next octave. The law of octaves, music, and wavelength harmonies in nature will cover in their own section. These laws and mathematical vibrations of growth and progression through octaves underpin atomic structure and the periodic table of elements, meaning that they compose the micro and macrocosmic universe. Another place in which the recurring triad shows up is in our visual perception of color. Our eyes have evolved to pick up vibratory color wavelengths of light within the small visual range of the light spectrum that our eyes are attuned to. However, this is deceiving, as when we witness objects in the world, let's say red, the pigment is actually absorbing all colored light except for the pigment color, meaning that when we see red, it's because it isn't there. We are identified as beings having trichomacy, or that our retina contains 3 types of color receptors to light. This relationship is triangular, being that we have red, yellow, and blue receptors. In the same vein, the LCD display visually illustrating this narration is composed of micro red, yellow, and blue pixelated diodes, whose light emissions blend upon our witness to create the whole picture and experience of different colors. As most practiced artists understand, the radial expression of color, as found on a color wheel, is one of triangular relationships. Opposing colors are complementary colors, or colors that go well with one another. There are also triangular opposed complementary relationships and squared relationships, which promote complementary harmony. Corporate branding uses this knowledge to promote a stimulating branding experience, utilizing harmony through the triad's expression of color. This is standard marketing practice. And since we're on the topic of commerce in the triad, if we briefly look at corporate branding, we realize we are unconsciously familiar with many of their triangular logos. I even use it in my own. The use of the triangle is visually arresting, a symbol of power that instigates alertness. This is an attention capture tactic under the power of branding. The visual preferences underpinning the rule of thirds within photography and composition, the waxing, full, and waning phases of the moon, the farming cycles of planting, harvesting, and dormant, the life cycle of the goddess as the virgin, mother, and crone. The triad is present within all cycles and relationships. Even in games. Rock, paper, scissors, ready, set, go, hip, hip, hooray, 3 strikes, you're out, easy as A, B, C, third time's a charm. Even in the formation of cultural systems, this magic number of comprehensible repetition loves to gravitate towards being a 3-step process. What about fairy tales or stories? Goldilocks and the 3 Bears, with porridge too hot, too cold, and just right. Dorothy of the Wizard of Oz clicking her heels 3 times between realms. The 3 Blind Mice, the 3 Stooges, the 3 Musketeers, the 3 Little Pigs. Mythical stories and fictional creative writing readily adopt the principle of the triad. Even variety of triangles themselves are subject to the triad. There's only 3 kinds. Furthermore, there's only 3 types of angles. Culturally, philosophically, cosmologically, geometrically, commercially, visually, naturally, playfully. All gravitations of 3 emerge from our conscious and subconscious relationship to the primordial archetype of the triad, the mediating aspect of relational process. In finding the triad baked into so many aspects of reality, what does this say about us experiencing the original 3 within systems that inform our very being? One of the oldest and most complete geometrical creation systems in existence was publicized and explored in depth by the Pythagorean mystery schools beginning around 570 BC. The tetractys. A geometrical, mathematical, and philosophical blueprint for the cosmogenic expansion of consciousness from spirit to form through a progressing triangular grid designated as the geometrical system of being. The thing about creation patterns is that our understanding of their operations isn't something that humans created. It's something that we've discovered through collaborative and self-engagement efforts, deep study, and insightful witness to the language of Mother Nature. 10 points arranged in 4 rows, 1, 2, 3, and 4 points in each row, is the 3rd level of the cosmogenic number series called the tetractys. The levels that unfold from the triangle are based on the number of points within each subsequent level of being, a sequential number sum increasing its formal expansion. The system of the tetractys, as the 3rd level of being unfolding from the vesica, contains the seed patterns of existence that are the numbers 1 through 10, composed of 9 individual triangles plus 1 as their container. Each triangle also represents a pyramid of numerical units where cosmogenic ratios unfold. This could be an entire section on its own, but for the time being, I'll leave that granularity to the number files. The tetractys is also the geometrical representation of what in today's world is known as the 4th triangular number. History reflects that triangular numbers and their spatial relationships initially began with Greece and ancient China, paving the way for today's level of progress in numerical theory, arrangement optimization, cryptography, mathematics, and computer sciences. The first 2 levels of the tetractys are the result of bisecting. After the first level of triangles is created from the bisection, that is the cross, the second level creates the net, or exploded polygonal structure for the tetrahedron, being the most basic 3D platonic solid, attributed to the classical element of fire, or animational life force. Not until the final layer is added do we find the double tetractys as a 2D hexagram, or under a 3D lens, the star tetrahedron, double tetrahedron, or under Hebrew esoterica, the Merkaba. We'll get into this later. The levels of the tetractys describe the aspects of experiential being through its levels of increase. The Pythagoreans stated that in death, the order reverses from the physical back to that of spirit. Interestingly, the Pythagoreans didn't claim to discover this system, which deepens the mystery, inviting areas of speculation based on historical accounts around the lives of these prominent philosophers, who prospectively brought these systems from elsewhere. This is a subject we'll get into later when exploring some of the historical giants of sacred geometry. Perhaps part of what I call the high order of the big cosmic joke, the tetractys actually shows up in the formation of games. Bowling pin and pool ball formations, the Christmas tree formation in American football, and even Chinese checkers. It's found in the Archbishop's coat of arms, poetry structure, and even aspects of subatomic particle physics. Along with the third level of completion, that is the tetractys expanding into the repeating triangular grid of being, there is the grid of the square, designated as that of space, and the grid of the circle, that of time. From the third level of completion, the tetractys continues into space through the doubling sequence. The three grids put together combine as the geometrical pathways of space, time, being, imbued with the innumerable dynamics of opposites, stemming from each relationship expansion point out of the dyad. The repeating template for this space-time being is the six-pointed star, circumscribed by a circle within a square as bisected by the cross, as we discussed as being the original movement parameters of space between the vesica. This 2D representation has different cultural names: six-pointed star, Star of David, or the hexagram. This spatial, numerical system of space-time being, bridging the 2D to the 3D, sets the stage for other discoveries and theories of existential mechanics, which we'll explore more of later. On the 2D level, zoomed out within this ever-expanding grid of life, if we remove the grid of space and the grid of being, we find that we are left with what is called the flower of life tapestry, or grid of time. If we remove all of the circles, barring the ones surrounding the original mirrored tetractys, we find the seed of life, or Genesis pattern. From this geometrical sequence, you can begin to see how cosmogenesis takes place. Two water drops fall equally into a circular pool of water. Where ripples intersect, relationships create new ripples. This is us, holonomic expressions in time, braided into a greater, complete, spatial whole within the world of being. The symphotic grid of the Triad.